Welcome, Pisces, to your Jupiter direct 4 month deep dive forecast. Jupiter, your traditional ruler, has been going through its annual 4 month retrograde beginning on the 11th of November at 25 degrees in Cancer, where it's exalted, inverting now through 10 degrees to 15 degrees Cancer. Through to the end of June, you do have a glorious opportunity with that fifth house energy to really glow up, to demonstrate your charisma, talent, and flair to the maximum. But Jupiter has been in that part of your situation since last June. Have you really felt the benefits of that? I'm going to explain why that might not be fully the case. I'm also going to just share briefly what I think the retrograde has been about, but also with Venus joining up with Jupiter over the next few months in two highly positive ways, how this next period of time can be a golden opportunity for you personally. I'm going to share with you your event chart to give you a sharper take on the background energy that will provide a backdrop for these next near to 4 months. And then, from the point of view of your ascendant, sun, or the moon, at the end of the forecast, you'll have a clear understanding of what you might expect in terms of relationships, energy, finance, and work. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now. And please stay with me. I'm also going to give you an opportunity to get a written guide to Jupiter in Cancer. So on the screen is your event chart, and there is Jupiter. But you know, at 15 degrees, that's a particularly significant degree. It's halfway through the sign of Cancer, and it's known as the maximum point of exaltation. So that's really amplified. And you've got two themes. The sign of Cancer is, of course, about nurture, security, protectiveness, but it's also about instinct, and it's ruled by the moon. But the host for you is the fifth house, which is very much more demonstrative. It can be about speculation and risk, and it can be about fun, joyfulness, romance, children. But when Jupiter arrived last year, Saturn, the planet of limitation, the greater malefic, had just arrived just before Jupiter in the sign of Aries. So when Jupiter arrived on the 9th of June, it immediately came into a crunching right angle. We'd had three right angles, squares, but those before were through the signs of Gemini and your sign of Pisces with Saturn. So it was a different kind of energy. So Jupiter's exaltation, which occurs every 11 to 13 years in the sign of Cancer, was really quelled by Saturn's more resistant and cautious energies. So if you were wanted to do something much more speculative from last summer in the north, last winter in the south, you may have encountered some barriers. If you did meet someone you really liked, there may have been something that just got in the way, finance, difference of values, some kind of practical flaw. And then the retrograde more recently, despite the fact that Jupiter and Saturn did collaborate a bit better towards the end of last year, the retrograde has just brought out much more the inner dimension of Jupiter, because that more outgoing, optimistic, expansive energy that people talk about, particularly on YouTube, in a very binary way. Jupiter's luck, Saturn is totally bad, doesn't take into account that you're a water sign, and Jupiter's very much about the spiritual, philosophical, and psychological dimension. And that can now come to life in a much more constructive way, because over the last few days, the Sun and also Mercury in your sign, despite its retrograde, have been forging a wonderful trine to Jupiter, the most enabling of all the aspects. And that trine has given you a balance between you taking an initiative, which primarily comes from the Sun, and therefore having the confidence to showcase in the most charismatic way what you've got to offer. Absolutely fabulous. But you might still need to be cautious about resources because of Saturn being so close to Venus in the second house. But they are coming into a great link with Pluto. Don't underestimate your innate natural understanding of the deeper processes of life. You have more connection to that than any other zodiac sign. And although Pluto may show up some things that do need to evolve and be released over the years it's in the 12th house of your situation, There may be past experiences, talents, and knowledge that you've got that can be recycled, that can bring you a financial return or a greater sense of security, whilst at the same time being more flamboyant in the way that Jupiter can enable you to be in the fifth house, as long as it feels right. We just need to be mindful of the location of the moon because it's the rule of the sign of Cancer and it's right at the top of your chart. So it is the most dominant planet as far as being the most visible in the northern hemisphere, and it's in a quincunx with Jupiter. So it is saying to you that when it comes to your professional situation, your feelings could be quite close to the surface. And if you are quite a private person, that could have some challenges. In fact, on this event, Jupiter stationed in direct, there's a quarter moon between the moon in Sagittarius and the sun in Pisces. So balancing what you want as an individual with what needs to fit in with established structures. If you work in a big organization or you have customers that expect things to be done in a certain way, as much as this is a relatively flamboyant station in direct of Jupiter, you just need to be conscious that there will be some flexing that is necessary. So, Venus. Venus is going to be forging a wonderful sextile to Jupiter in the middle of April. But then on the 6th of June, Jupiter emerges from its post retrograde shadow. In other words, it gets back to the degree of 25 that the retrograde began on the 11th of November. That releases more potential, but then Venus plays catch up and aligns with Jupiter perfectly on the 8th, 9th of June. And that fifth house energy, romance, can be to do with the arts, where you have great abilities. It could be to do with performance. It could be to do with children. If you'd like to have a child, it may be their exploits that are really shining brightly. But do know by that first week, the end of that first week of June into the start of the second week, something really significantly splendid can happen. And some of the frustrations that you encountered because of the greater malefic applying to your traditional ruler at the start of his journey through the sign of Cancer can be a thing of the past. But what that will have done is taught you a lot about fortitude, a lot about sticking in there, a lot about how things don't always flow, that sometimes we have to dig in. And Saturn is back in that second house. You still need to make sure that your foundations are firm. With Mercury in a retrograde, some things are still probably not going to go forwards, whilst other things can. So it is fluid, but I think there's real cause for optimism for you, Pisces, over these next 4 months. Now, specifically about work, I think if you are creative, it does seem to me that self-employment would be a better option for you. But that's not going to help you if you are someone who's got a long-standing role in a bigger organization. Just know that if you are suppressed around demonstrating your individuality or flair, that's something that could stick in your craw at times. If you are wanting to focus mainly on playing safe around resources, that more risk-taking energy at the fifth house might not call out to you so much, and that's where Saturn can still have an impact. But I think around relationships, the fifth house can be about true love. If you do meet someone with Venus going through Taurus, the conversation, Uranus is still there, things can happen very quickly and then it could develop from there. It just depends. But what I can tell you is that Jupiter in the fifth house, without being limited by Saturn, is going to give you much more get go and self confidence, particularly supported by the Sun and Mercury in your own sign. If you've yet to watch your March in-depth forecast, please click on that link. Venus in Aries, very much about your financial picture. Please click that one. If you'd like to read my deep dive written on Jupiter in Cancer, please click on the link for my website. If you'd like to work with me direct, please send me my testimonials below. If you'd like to order your personal horoscopes, very accurate, very good value, totally unique to you, the individual. You can get 50% off by applying Astro 26 at the checkout. If you want the Soul Karmic version, please apply Draco 26 at the checkout for the Draconic version. Take care, all the best, and goodbye.